Alrighty, welcome everyone to another live Missed Takes. Obviously, we're still all sheltering in place, or quarantined, or in our home prisons, however you want to kind of angle it. So we're not meeting up anywhere live. I mean, in person, we are live. This is going great. Anyway, so we're gonna tackle two movies today. First one is The Delightful Blade. The second movie we're gonna talk about is The Running Man. We'll have a little intermission in between. So if you haven't seen the show before, what we're going to do is we're going to go through a list of movie mistakes for these movies, and it's up to us to explain how they're not really movie mistakes at all. But we have to do it within the storyline of the movie, right? We can't explain it was camera tricks. We have to explain why that works in the movie and why this movie is therefore flawless. And since we are live on YouTube, I'll be watching the chat, so if you want to throw any challenges our way or try to call bullshit on our bullshit, you're more than welcome to do so.
Bullshitter, or can you?
With me, as always, is the delightful Eric.
That's me.
And returning to Mistakes after a far too long absence is Jim.
Damn straight.
Too kind.
So, Mr. Eric, tell us about what movie we're watching first.
Oh, God. 1998, the year I graduated high school. Blade. Arguably the peak of Wesley Snipes' career? Can we...
And life.
Yeah,
let's just go there.
Let's be honest. The man is still working. Can't knock him for that. But
he's got all those past tax bills to pay. He's got to do something with his life.
Blade is the top. And just to dig right into the hot takes. Well, actually, first I'll tell you about my beer. So I'm having a Sun Reaper from Toppling Goliath, which seems super close.
I myself am making do with a little hard seltzer because it is just kind of nice and summery. City Water from Solemn Oath. That's not focusing, but whatever. There we go.
And Eric isn't making do as much as I am because my fat ass finally decided to get into shape and cut carbs, so I'm making do with Crystal Light. So you're both
right. But see, you're both fine because Solemn Oath, there's lots of oaths and vows and kind of stuff like that with the vampire code. And Crystal Light, Vampire's Light. Nailed it.
He's a daywalker.
He's a daywalker. All right, so...
I appreciate your covering my butt on my pathetic beverage choice.
Always happy to cover butts. To kind of go back to the height of Wesley Snipes' career, my first fucking thought upon watching this movie again, and I've watched it a bunch of times, but watching it again, it's like you're hit right out of the gate with Wesley Snipes, Stephen Dorff, and I'm like, the fuck ever happened to Wesley Snipes and Stephen Dorff? This was such a hot moment for them, where it was a big deal, but it's like, if you tried to fucking lead a movie today with Wesley Snipes and Stephen Dorff, you're like, nah, I'm fine.
They had above the title billing, and the last time I saw Stephen Dorff was in a vaping commercial.
Yes! I was going to bring that up.
Well,
it was like one of those shitty ones you find at like a Walgreens, like Blue or something.
Like the ones that are sitting next to the register at the supermarket.
I have a theory that Chris Pratt went to like a crossroads in the middle of the night and was like, made a deal and stole Stephen Dorff's soul and put his own Pratt on top of it. But it's like, I feel like a straight-laced Chris Pratt could play that role like a sincere Chris Pratt. So yes, I think Chris Pratt just stole Stephen Dorff's mojo.
I kind of love Stephen Dorff because, if you look at Stephen Dorff in the same light as you do like classic 80s movie villains, even though he came a little later, like Biff from Back to the Future or Johnny from Karate Kid, of like all your classic movie villains, he's got the most deliciously punchable face. He's got like resting prick face constantly. And so he's the perfect asshole. He's just got that like perma sneer and like the eyes are just a little too close together.
Well, here's the thing. When I was a teenager when this movie came out, I identified with his sassiness. Now, as a parent of teenagers, I'm like, oh, someone needs to fucking take his Xbox away. He's being a real shit right now.
That is the tipping point, when you stop identifying with the asshole and start saying, somebody needs to bend him over to me and give him a good spanking. That's
when you're identifying with the Vampire Council, like, yeah, he really is a fucking asshole, isn't he? It's like, someone shut this kid up.
On his fucking shoulders. It's like, where did we go wrong?
He's like sitting in the corner with headphones, not paying attention. It's like, he's just a shitty teenager. That's what he is.
Also, it's like, I think this was like him distilling and refining and perfecting that perma-sneer, douche stance. He began that back in a movie called So Fucking What? SFW. Mm. Do you guys remember that one at all?
My only other memory of him is
So it's him and Reese Witherspoon, like underage or barely legal, like Reese Witherspoon. They get taken hostage in a convenience store for like some number of days, with the hostage takers basically sending out their broadcast, like they're filming everything on like a freaking shoulder-mounted like camcorder. And after a while, they just become so nihilistic and disenchanted with the situation that they just start throwing out like stream of consciousness, like commentary. And then when the situation is resolved, they become like folk heroes because it's like, you were in this horrible situation. It was so intense. It was it's like, and they come out going, so what's your fucking point? Like, it's like,
So fucking what?
I feel like so fucking what kind of defines his entire vibe. Like that's his character and everything.
So it's like watching that and then comparing it to this in Blade, which I think is maybe 3 years apart. It's like, oh, he did nothing but chisel away at that smarmy, smug, snotty attitude,
that arrogant, underqualified. Because I really think the ultimate expression of his resting prick face is that, you know, I'm spoiler alert, I'm blowing the end of the movie, but when he just decides to kill the Eastern European German head vampire and just out of nowhere, apropos of nothing, unqualified, take his seat at the head of the table of a beautifully diverse group of ancient vampires, like the black dude with the dreadlocks, the Asian guy with the Fu Manchu mustache, the Romanian woman, but he figures because he's younger than them and because he's white, he can just, you know, kill the leader, just expose the beautiful German vampire to sunlight, and then just unearned take a seat at the top of the table. That is corporate America and male white privilege just rolled up in a perfect little sunblock nutshell.
Mm-hmm.
Deacon Frost, if he was just a person and not a vampire, would be the cause of and the source of so many Me Too stories in this day and age. And I'm not throwing shade or making light of that, but it is just, that is how despicable his character fucking is.
The only other thing I remember Stephen Dorff from, and if I even remembering it correctly, is like some kind of like Space Truckers movie with him and Debbie Mazar.
And Dennis Hopper, and it is exactly called Space Truckers.
Oh, yeah.
With Charles Dance and
that's funny. I don't remember Charles Dance being in that, but yeah.
He plays the guy that makes the robots that are in the space truck of, you know, the
that's right.
space truck.
I've ever place in my heart for Mazar. Go on.
The last thing I want to like hot takes before we like really get into the mistakes is that I think watching this again for the first time since it came out, I think 99% of it still holds up pretty well. You know, I don't think Blade really gets enough credit for like from the first scene literally birthing the MCU. I mean, this was before the Raimi Spider-Man movies. Yep. This was before X-Men. This was the first like large scale, big screen, wide release Marvel movie, and people just don't remember that. So I really think, you know, despite all the shortcomings of this film that we'll get into in a second, I think Blade still deserves credit for being the first real Marvel movie that anybody saw and cared about.
Like, for the most part, the effects still hold up pretty well.
They ran out of money towards the third act, though, because I mean, we'll get into that in a little while.
It shows.
Soundtrack's great. Like, that rave scene is a fucking classic. This movie's also one of the reasons I wanted and owned a black trench coat, because it just looks so cool. You know, it just looks so cool. All
right.
And just one last thing. It kind of extends beyond this movie, but this movie is just another one. Why the fuck are vampires so messy? Like, why the fuck are they always, like, just fucking spraying blood everywhere, and, like, it's all over their fucking shirt and clothes? Yeah. It's like, that's their food, right? Like, I realize if you're eating a burger, sometimes some ketchup's gonna fall, but you don't just go, and, like, fucking, like, sauce is pouring down, and then you're, like, making out with your girlfriend because it's a really fucking good burger. It's like, just eat your goddamn food. Just eat your food.
We can go to the supermarket. We can get more ground beef if the burger falls all over our shirt. These guys are literally bathing in blood that's spraying out of the sprinkler system in the ceiling. That is pretty wasteful of their very hard to come by food supply. I wholly agree.
Yeah, you know what? There are vampires in Africa starving, and we're just spraying blood everywhere like we don't care.
That's another just a huge white privilege thing. We're just wasting food all the time.
Goddamn vampires.
So
that's right. So
points before. Real quick before we jump into this. I had mentioned the director is polarizing to me. I will bring that up in the course of the show because I'm sure we'll dive into that. But also, two quick things. My cousin actually worked on this movie. This was one of his first gigs out of the gate as a concept artist. He had done some work for the automotive industry, and this was right around the time when he made the leap from automotive design to actual film. So Tani Kunitake, he's actually listed in the credits, did the concept sketches for the Blood Rave, the Secret Chamber. I mean, and 99 was a big year for him because he also worked on like Fight Club. He worked on the Godzilla movie. He did the concept art. He didn't actually have anything to do with the decisions made about that fucking movie. But he also he worked on like Final Fantasy and a slew of others, and he's been working ever since.
Bravo.
Yeah, so big props to this. You know, got some of the fam, you know, paid and recognized. But
Well, technically, you have to announce that at the beginning that you are technically personally related. You're personally invested in this film, so you have to divest that.
Be objective. We understand.
Right.
Thank you for the disclaimer.
Right.
I have a bias. But yeah, let's.
Get into it.
Okay, so when Frost has has Udo Kier, the amazing Udo Kier on the beach, after he pulls out the first vampire tooth, you see blood all over his mouth. But when it shows the close-up of him pulling out the other tooth, there is no blood.
I'm going to say that this is down to vampire like physiology and anatomy, where it's like the first tooth comes out, it's like a panic response. You know, the adrenaline kicks in, fight or flight, and so vampires clearly they've been around. They're not an aberrant, like clunky genetic mutation. They're a species that had millennia to evolve. So it's one of those things where it's like, okay, pull a tooth out, blood, you know, whatever. But also their skin is made, it's like, it's their, like you said, it's their food. It's also something they need to survive. So their skin is just going to like soak it back.
Suck it right back in. That makes
sense. Try to save as much as possible.
Oh.
And when you pull the second one out, at that point, you're already in like the, oh shit mode. So it's like, okay, the tooth just comes out, but the body's going, take the tooth. We're just going to seal that off.
I think when vampire bodies are injured, the healing response kicks in. So by the time they pulled out the second tooth, the body was probably like, oh shit, we're injured. We have to kick into healing mode. So the second wound sealed up almost immediately right in the gum line.
Well, the interesting thing too is because Udo Kier is one of the the pure bloods. He's not like a fucking mud blood that was made later. Yeah. So maybe for pure bloods they like absorb that blood super fast, and that's why the other vampires are so messy because they're like, oh, I've seen them eat like this, and it's like, no, kid, I can absorb that blood that fast. You can't. Don't be like me.
Yeah. You can't be like me. You're not like me.
Chaz says that they are the first T-1000. Interesting. Interesting.
If you include the apocryphal third part of this movie in Trinity, which I choose to, much like Crystal Skull for Indiana Jones, I just choose to view as overfunded fanfic.
Crystal Skull, I'm not familiar with that.
Don't bother. Yeah,
doesn't sound familiar at all.
You're not missing anything. No, just you could honestly just punch yourself in the dick and have a better night.
I have.
Yeah, I just assume that is that could be something that was perhaps in their dim dark past with the idea of vampires being able to shapeshift or make themselves more appealing. So we'll I agree with that.
Yeah, interesting.
All right, I have a question as a hobby musician. In the intro, well, not quite the intro, it's towards the end of the first act. After Karen is attacked at the hospital, Blade brings her back to he and Whistler's conclave in the factory. And I was watching this with subtitles on because that's usually what I do. Not going to explain that one. But Whistler is welding or something, or he's got a grinder wheel. And the subtitles said, Bad Moon Rising is playing on the radio. And he turns off the radio. And then Blade comes in and they have this whole conversation about how she's a hematologist, and it's like a 5.5 minute. He injects her with the garlic, and then because Whistler is the ultimate, doesn't give a fuck, he goes back to what he was doing, turns back on the radio, and like 17 minutes later, Bad Moon Rising is still playing. That song is 2 minutes and 29 seconds long. Explain this to me, please.
Sure. There's a radio station in this world that's run by werewolves. Okay, hear me out.
Okay.
Because we already know the vampires exist. It's not insane to think that werewolves also exist. And they also kind of exist within their own secret society of like, they've cut deals, but they're kind of in jokes. So they call themselves I'm Wolfman on the Sixes, right? So they think it's hilarious. But
like Wolfman Jack, it started way back then.
Wolfman Jack, exactly. So, but what they do once a year just to taunt the vampires. Because there's always that fucking lycanthrope vampire war going on in any universe, right? They just play Bad Moon Rising over and over again on one day out of the year. Just it's like
It's like Devil's Night or Cinco de Mayo or Day of the Dead.
Right, and
They pick a day
it's
out.
like you can watch Christmas Story back to back to back on Thanksgiving, right? It's the same thing. They just loop that song over and over again just to toy with the vampires. Just
And because Whistler hates vampires, he listens and sympathizes with the werewolf radio station and listens to Babylon Rising on a loop for 24 hours.
Honestly,
Win.
I think it's entirely possible and reasonable to assume that he has a relationship with the werewolves. That's probably why he knows so much about weapons, why he knows so much about killing vampires. I mean, how has Whistler learned so much, even as an old dude, even as an old far Chris Christopherson? This dude has centuries of fucking knowledge for some reason. It's because the werewolves.
Also, that the vampires have minions. Why wouldn't the werewolves? He's probably one of their minions.
Ooh, he's
Or
like a
at
fucking
least
werewolf
a minion,
familiar.
like maybe an associate, because also,
Yeah.
as we learn in this mythology, he's got to be getting that silver from someplace. So, how does this benefit the werewolves? Gets rid of their waste material. Where it's like, no, this is a toxic, deadly chemical to us. And here's a guy that's purposely hunting the people we compete with.
Love it.
Fuck it, yeah. We'll leave them alone. We'll give them information. We aren't
Use
gonna
all the
fuck with
silver.
them.
Use all the
It's like-
fucking silver.
Oh, we've got. Oh,
Makes sense.
we caught these hunters with a whole fuck ton of silver ammunition. Send it to Whistler. Where are they at? Detroit, San Francisco, L.A., New York. Ship it. They'll find it. It'll get to them.
Yeah, because they move around a lot, and that's another thing that I had a question about, at the risk of trying to get in two in a row. But you bring up a really interesting point. They never really establish what city it is. We're led to believe it's Los Angeles because in one of the opening scenes, the street scenes are clearly meant to look like Manhattan, but there's a Carl's Jr. in the background, and I know those aren't on the East Coast. And they do some skyline shots, but they never actually they say we follow these guys from town to town, we track their syndicate, we know what they're up to, but there's never any real hard establishing shots. The skyline shots are Los Angeles, the street level shots are clearly Manhattan, but they never say until the end of the movie, when one of the most recognizable pieces of architecture in the fucking world, St. Basil's Cathedral in Red Square, comes up on the screen, and then they decide to put up Moscow. Oh, cool. Thanks. Now it's great to have that information.
Yeah, it's almost like they were trying to go the 7 route, where until like the last 20 minutes, they were like, this could be any city. No, it now clearly has to be a city close to like a desert for the.
Because I thought seeing the opening screen of Tetris buried in snow could have been like Poughkeepsie. That's really beneficial for you to let me know where Moscow
Where is
at.
this?
Screw you! I know Schaumburg when I see it.
So when Karen tells Blade after she's been thrown to the other building, and she's like, "My shoulder's dislocated," he just grabs her arm and fixes it. She didn't tell him which shoulder.
No, she didn't.
Did he flip a coin? Did he roll the dice?
So he is part vampire, so
Yeah.
he has some extrasensory perceptions, heightened senses, abilities, physical, stamina, whatever. So he's probably able to kind of look at her and go, okay, if I were a vampire, I would know, because of my enhanced senses, where her weaknesses and injuries are.
It was
So
an
he's-
internal injury. He could probably smell where there was a little bit of blood happening in her body, so he knew which shoulder it was instinctively through some vampire sixth sense.
That's back to Chaz's Terminator point. That's full on like scanning the body,
scanning for weaknesses.
What confused me more was in the scene where she dislocated her shoulder. He fixed it by pulling on it, whereas when he dislocates his shoulder in the train scene later, she pushes on it to fix it. So I guess dislocating the shoulder, as long as you do something with it in some direction, it just pops it back.
Yeah, and movie rules. It always works the first time, no matter what.
Yeah,
no fucking matter what. It's just like, oh, perfect. Oh, and now I'm pain free. Thank you.
Yeah, whether it's Blade, Ruskies, Lethal Weapon, a dislocated shoulder can always be fixed on the first attempt,
and then you're fine.
As long as you push the arm in any direction that is, towards the body vaguely.
Right. And I remember 25 years ago, Ryan, buying you beers at TGI Fridays after we got done doing the Halloween show because you had to dislocate your shoulder to get out of that straitjacket, and it hurt every fucking time for 2 or 3 days. Terrible. And you were 20 at the time, so
if Mel Gibson can do it, I can.
Yeah, badly, but yes.
All right, during the subway tunnel fight, and this is something that never occurred to me, but in retrospect, is pretty fucking hilarious. The subway train. When he dislocates his shoulder, in fact, so accidental segue, takes over 60 seconds to pass by Blade and Quinn. If the train is traveling at 30 miles an hour, the train would have to be a half mile long for 66 train cars at 40 feet per car. A regular subway train is 8 or maybe 10 cars long. So what is up with this insanely long subway?
Well, I think... Go ahead, Eric.
So I'm going to say that this subway train, it is the usual municipal tracks, but the train in question is actually part of the vampire hierarchy, where they are using that. If they had gone just a few cars towards like the engine or the control car, they would have come across the cold storage cars, where it's like they have more bodies being moved around.
Oh, okay.
So it's like Midnight Meat Train, where it's like, yeah, it might be a regular train, but it's like on runs for like that the clinic where they house the blood, that hospital or whatever, that is actually owned and run by vampires to store their food. This is basically their version of like Instacart or Uber Eats or
Well, and
DoorDash.
I mean, we already know that they've kind of cut some kind of deal with the city, right? Because their half of the deal is like they're not going to throw blood raves, they're not going to murder, they're going to try to stay in the dark. So maybe part of that exchange is like, yeah, we'll give you like parts of this subway to just like be your vampire cars.
Like during the low traffic hours, it's like, oh, you got to move, 40 cars worth, like 40 refrigerator cars worth of cadavers to another location for reasons. Fine, as long as it's after the watershed of like 11 p.m. to like 4 a.m., the tracks are yours, and you can use as many cars as you want. Start that AM commuter rush. It's like, all right, Nosferatu, that's cute.
we got
Cough the cars back up. We got people waiting for the A train to get back to the fucking stock exchange.
Chaz says the red line's like 22 cars long. Maybe New York or LA is a 90-car train. Well, this city is New York and LA, so it's not.
I'm sorry, I lived in LA. They would never have a train that big, that efficient, and that convenient. Never.
That was another thing that threw me, is that in LA they don't really have subways because putting underground transport in an area where there are volatile tectonic plates, despite what Elon Musk is doing right now, not the greatest idea. So that kind of threw me too, in thinking maybe we're supposed to think this is Manhattan with the Carl's Jr. and the LA buildings in the background.
I mean, and if it is Manhattan, it's like, bear in mind, this is the same one where it's like right around this time, like Tony Stark is probably like just getting the rights to that building. So it's like, yeah, this would have to be more East Coast, I'm guessing, versus like LA Avengers territory.
All right, here's something. In one scene we see. Okay, I got a picture of this because it jumped out at me. Blade is walking around with his coat off, and he's got his sword strapped to his back, and that's a long ass sword. You can see it kind of tops out right underneath his ass cheeks. Yeah. So why in one scene we see him? He gets in the car with Karen. He gets in the Charger with Karen, and she gets in the car. He gets in the car. He sits down in the driver's seat, still got the sword on his back, and it doesn't like shred the upholstery and like go down into the floorboards. He's still wearing the sword, sitting down in the driver's seat of the car. Where does it go?
Well, I mean, we already know that this sword has some pretty crazy technology, right?
True.
So I think it's reasonable to assume
titanium acid etched finger splitters.
Well, exactly. So maybe it can kind of like collapse into itself a little bit, like almost like a trick sword, but just for portability's sake. So it can like it can contain itself down to the size. It's basically fucking Lion-O's sword, right? He can go like thunder, fuck you vampires, and then it's a full size sword, and
it's like a lightsaber,
right? And he still strolls around with it at full length because it's intimidating. It's purely intimidation factor at that point.
Right.
But when it needs to, like, all right, I just need to fucking tuck this thing away because even Blade understands, especially as a Daywalker, you can't actually walk around Lost Manhattan with a fucking giant blade and not get fucking harassed, right?
St. Angeles.
Especially as a fucking black dude. Like, he knows what's up. Like, you can't just fucking walk down the street in a trench coat and a sword and not get harassed in 20 minutes.
But as a black dude, and again, this is like really, it's hypersensitive to the times, but as a black dude, there were two scenes that jumped out at me that even in 1998 wouldn't necessarily have washed. There's the one scene where a heavily armed black dude is beating the shit out of a uniformed cop in broad daylight on a city street, and 30 other cops don't show up to make Swiss cheese out of him. That we have proven is completely unrealistic given everything that's happening in the country right now. He's just beaten Krieger's face on the trunk of the squad car, and people are just walking by like, "You want to get brunch? This is nothing's wrong." And then the other scene where Frost has a child. And the little Asian girl, and he sprays bullets at him, and then so you've got this again, a heavily armed black man in America, regardless of how good his intentions are, which we know doesn't matter to cops, opens fire on a guy running away from him, and then grabs a little girl and runs away. And then 10 seconds later, he's on the street and he just says, "Go home." And there's people just walking by like, "Oh, we got to catch that new movie." Nobody says a word about any of that.
You know what? Here's what I'll go with. We know that the Blade has all of the vampire's strengths, and while it's not necessarily addressed in this particular film, what we know about vampires is that vampires do have telepathic abilities. So it's entirely possible that he can kind of put out this low grade kind of like mask, essentially, where it just looks like the fucking cop is bashing himself on his own trunk. People are like, that dude's having a fucking bad day. That dude's having a rough fucking go. And they're freaking out because fucking Stephen Dorff is running around like an asshole. They're not freaking out about the heavily armed black man. So maybe that's it. Maybe that's how he gets... So the sword, going back to the sword, it still collapses purely for the ease of driving in a car and whatnot. But
I just got to make it clear that I would not have a problem with any of this, but knowing from what I'm seeing in the news, like a heavily armed black man beating the shit out of a cop in broad daylight on a city street, even 25 years ago, I think that probably would have raised a couple of eyebrows. I'd be fine with it, but the cops, they've proven otherwise.
Then it only works if he has a low-grade telepathic mask, like fucking Jedi trick.
Yeah.
You win. Okay, that totally makes sense.
Yeah, because also, bear in mind, this isn't like an elderly dude or even like your average, just citizenry. This is a jacked black dude in sunglasses, trench coat, carrying a sword, all of a sudden brandishing a machine pistol in broad daylight in proximity to a cop who has clearly had the shit kicked out of him. It's like, okay, wow, either this is Montreal on a bank holiday, or it's like some dark corner of the MCU where it's like, cops are a thing.
They exist.
When Blade first opens the freezer to get to Pearl, there's lettuce on the top shelf. When he reopens the freezer and starts on the stairs, the top shelf has a tray covered in foil on it, and the lettuce is gone.
So this, I'm going to guess, is it's a combination of high technology and the mysticism that we've already touched on, where just opening that fridge, it's had some kind of vampiric incantation, or just because Pearl is, clearly not a new vampire. This has been his shtick for a while. So he's able to sort of manipulate, to an extent, at least what the kitchen crew sees on a day-to-day basis in that fridge. Someone like Blade, it's a little more iffy if the suggestion is going to take of oh, it's just lettuce. Closes it.
Oh,
it's tinfoil. It's brownies and lettuce.
Yeah, so I like that. So basically, the spell kind of recasts every time, so that it's not, because people get suspicious as they're like, I've seen that same fucking frozen salmon for 6 months. What the fuck?
Right.
So it's like a refresh, right? It's like a fucking randomly generated kitchen stuff
and
spell.
For Blade, it's a little tougher to. So he's just like, yeah. So he's already onto it. Also, this will be as good a point as any, because I do want to bring this up, because just past hot takes or whatnot. So the director has a cameo in here as the vampire who's feeding on the random woman on the corner, and I believe it's when they are pursuing Krieger to that club.
Literally the creepiest vampire in a movie full of creepy vampires is the director.
It's like he rears up, you hear the wildcat growl, and then he just goes back to feeding. Also,
that moment was as creepy as the moment in The Shining where Shelley Duvall is walking down the hallway and there's some dude in a dog costume blowing a guy in a navy jacket for no reason. It's out of context, but it's just there to make you go, "Oh, Jesus," for like a half a second.
Was that? Also, once we get back into that club, I have a thing to say about that, just what I saw the first time in the theater. But so Stephen Norrington, I believe, is the director's name. I'm 95% sure of that. So
that's more sure than we normally are. It's fine. Go on.
Yeah. So this is, I believe, one of his first, if not his very first, theatrically released, studio-backed movies. He did a movie a few years earlier with some character actors. That's if you recognize these names, you've watched a lot of bad movies. Chelsea Fields, Brad Dourif.
Oh. I mean,
Peter DeVries by any other name, along with a slew of others, but it was called Death Machine. I don't know if
a great B movie title.
Yeah, the titular Death Machine is like if someone built battle armor for a Velociraptor.
Okay, I'm in.
And then just made it a cyborg and said, okay, yeah, this is it. This is the end product. it is a
Well, see-
wonderfully shitty movie because it's like they built this thing, this giant like blade-fingered, razor-toothed like cyborg to scale, and practically it's not miniature, it's not CGI, and no one is sleepwalking through the movie, but the movie, the story, the dialogue, the choices the characters make are interminable.
I call bullshit on Death Machine then, because like, is it actually like essentially a cyborg dinosaur? Is that kind of what it is?
No, it looks like one. It has the posture and like
Yeah, see, then
shape.
You don't call that a Death Machine, right? You fucking call it a Kilosaur, or you call it a fucking like T get wrecked or something like that, right? But you don't. But like, the Death Machine needs to either be a fucking car. I mean, I call bullshit. I'm already mad now that they call that Death Machine.
But it's
Fuck
like
you,
so
Death
Death
Machine.
Machine in of itself, it's a wondrous little time capsule. I want to say it came out around the same time as Lawnmower Man, to give you an idea of a timestamp.
Which is the film I was referring to back in the Facebook thread a couple of days ago.
I love that.
So
I love that.
yeah,
Movie.
so-
Those fucking effects don't hold up. Anyway,
Yeah.
Blade.
Stephen Norrington's other theatrically released movie, which has a cast you couldn't do today, mostly because either they're not working, they're not popular, or you just couldn't find them, or they may have dropped out. The League of Extraordinary Gentlemen.
Oh no! Oh no!
This dude, he's got an eye for effects, he's got a nose for casts, but he can't pick a script.
I don't know what's sadder, the fact that League of Extraordinary Gentlemen was Sean Connery's last movie, or that Street Fighter was Raul Julia's last movie. Both of those are a terrible button to put on otherwise stellar careers.
Well, shit, as an actor, like, for much as they say, like, oh, you know what, you got bills to pay, right? Michael Caine's line about Jaws 4 will always be hilarious, where he's like, I've never seen it, but by all accounts it's terrible, but I've seen the house that it built. Like, it's a fucking great, it's a great line to be in a bad movie. But as you're getting older and you're in a bad movie, you gotta think, fuck, is this my last movie? Is this how I go out? Like, you gotta fucking be smart, old actors.
Well, Sean Connery's still alive. He just retired by choice. He could still he blew on doing, what was that? Crystal Skull doesn't exist. Whatever his last movie was, but Sean Connery could work if he wanted to.
That's true.
Here's how close we were in so many regards. Do you know who Sean Connery almost played as like an end cap to his career? And this is
Bond,
after,
right? He wasn't supposed to, or not Bond, like Blofeld or something. He was supposed to do like a Bond thing, I thought.
No, well, they wanted to bring him on for like interviews and shit like that for when they had Brosnan, but no, he was the first choice of the studio, or it may have been the director, but he was in the running to play fucking Gandalf in Lord of the Rings.
I mean, I'm glad he passed, but I'm kind of intrigued by that.
Script. He just didn't get the character, so he's like, I don't fucking understand this. I'm out. I'm just gonna go play Alan Quatermain in Africa, and just
good move.
And pieced out, and we got Sir Ian for that. So also the League of Extraordinary Gentlemen connection to Lord of the Rings. Stuart Townsend, Dorian Gray, was first cast and started working. This is like an Eric Stoltz Back to the Future scenario. He was Aragorn.
Oh, yikes.
Wow.
Different movie is all I'm going to say.
Very different movie.
God, I'm glad
all right, real quick. There's one, I know we're coming up on time here, but I had to say.
Well, we'll go a little long on this one because A, it's live, and B, we went off on a whole Stephen Dorff tangent, so we'll go a little long on this one. We'll get Stephen.
There's one scene after Frost has kidnapped Karen where she mocks him for being not a pureblood, and she says, why didn't those scars heal? Because you turned after, you must have got them before. So what I'm wondering is, in several scenes where the lighting is good, you can see the half moon scar underneath Blade's right eye. And that got me thinking, so why didn't that heal? And then the other corollary to that question is, the first time we see Blade, he's a C-section baby. He's being removed from his mother, and he's got a very prominent umbilical cord in that scene. So when the doctor cuts the umbilical cord off and it grows back, how does he eventually get rid of it? Because we know it's not still there. He doesn't wrap it around his waist like a belt. Because when he gets locked into the standing upright bleeding sarcophagus in the chamber, there's no knotted, gnarly cord of scar tissue.
Oh God, like disgusting.
Belt should be.
He doesn't have like the Striga dangling bits from like the Witcher series.
Yeah. So why does Blade have scars and no umbilical cord if he was technically born somebody who can regenerate?
Well, because he's a pure blood in a sense, but he's not a pure blood in the way that the other ones are pure blood. But I'll just say it's simply a factor of his. It's not like he was instantaneously born with all of his abilities, right? They kind of they kind of grew and matured as he grew and matured, like because otherwise he'd still have baby bones and shit, right? So like
Yeah, okay.
it's kind of thing where like the body still has to form to some, and as your abilities grow, and like maybe like once you hit puberty, then it's like boom, full on abilities. So it's
I
just
mean,
kind
this
of
is technically the MCU, and he didn't have a Professor X to kind of like bring him into the school to teach him how to use his power. So maybe they didn't all manifest at the same time.
He
Right.
had Chris Christopherson who chose not to kill him in puberty, because we do get that little line of dialogue where his need for blood had taken over at puberty. So maybe that's when things got ramped up.
No, here's the thing. It also makes no sense when Chris Christopherson says that, because he's like, I almost killed you. Like, well, fucking why didn't you? You know why? Because there was a fucking werewolf standing next to him that fucking lowered the gun and said, he smells different.
We're gonna need him to
Right?
kill the vampires
Like,
later.
he smells different. He's not a vampire.
He's
So
sitting there
like,
going like, he's sitting there going,
Chaz says vampires
Alright.
shed their unnecessary parts, and appendix fall out, foreskin falls off. But I don't want to get in a whole like vampire circumcision argument. That's a whole separate thing. So that's also possible. Yeah, it
I'm
basically
glad you
like
brought up Whistler finding him on the street at 13, because that actually raised a question. They established Whistler found him feeding on homeless people on the street at 13, so we can assume he's been on his own for a little while.
right.
The last time, I mean, Blade has his mother's driver's license, but the last time he saw her was like as a newborn after the C-section. We all know, like, our earliest memories kick in at like 3-4 years old. This is as far back as we can go. So when he's in the chamber and that like Darth Vader sarcophagus thing comes up and his mom gets out and she looks at him and says, Eric? Why doesn't he say, who the fuck is Eric? How does he know what his name is? The last time that they saw each other, he was being carried away by a pediatrician, and he's been on the street ever since.
aha, wait.
How does he know what his name is?
Okay.
Because, so the name may not be the trigger here, but again, it's something that's a little difficult to show, especially for this director, given that we just went over his filmography. But they do say that even in humans, and I have to assume that this holds true for vampires, since we are of a very similar physiology, smell is tied to memory. Even if he can't visually remember his mother, if his
And he's got better
senses,
smell than humans do.
Right.
it has to be that. So it's like if his vampire senses were already keyed in a little bit at birth, he might have the vaguest idea of just going like, "Mom."
That's fair.
So it's like he may not have never ever recognized her, but it's like it's one of those things where it's like in the back of his head, it's like familiar. Just I know this. Where it's like he just has to sift through, 20 plus years of like, abandonment issues, feral upbringing.
I just can't imagine how he'd know what his name is. But then, because Blade definitely sounds like the sort of name an edgy 13-year-old homeless would give himself on the street.
Oh God!
Hey boy, who are you? My name's Blade. Yeah, sure it is. Come back to my factory. Whatever you say, old man.
Yeah.
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 This is a silver steak that somehow doesn't hurt you when you hold it.
So that's I'd agree with that. That her saying Eric means nothing to him. It's more about the understanding who she is, and that memory trigger. Like she could have said anything. She could have said like little Jeffy. It wouldn't have mattered. Like
A
nothing
good
was.
line to insert there for Blade would have been, okay, so that's my name. My name was Eric. It would have been a little exposition heavy, but at least it wouldn't have been,
My
how the
name-
fuck does he know what his name is?
My name's Eric. Like
Yeah, or even like he's got the gun out and she's like, it's like, who the hell's Eric? And then she just kind of, it's like, I chose your name by the second trimester or whatever. It's like
Would
whatever.
have been
You
a better
could,
line.
yeah, it's like
Very
she could
dangerously.
have walked out and said, Cartman.
Blade.
Just- For this, it's the same effect.
I kind of wish that he had some like weird hippie name. Like it wasn't even like Eric. It was like Sunflower. Like oh no, my name is Sunflower. Oh
I'm
shit.
sticking with Blade. Fuck you.
Yeah.
Blade.
Yeah, we're doing Blade. Blade in this one. Murder Flower is my name now.
Death Blossom.
Actually, Sunflower, Daywalker, that would kind of fucking worked. I want to go back and rewrite that in. At the end, we'll do
for Fierce song waiting to happen.
we'll do a couple more, and then we'll get ready for the next one. But at the end, when Frost and Blade are fighting, with again kind of the we ran out of money budget on the effects there.
When he cuts him in half and the blood kind of looks like the jelly from a Pop-Tarts ad from about 15 years ago. Yeah.
Oh God, 25 years ago. Come on, dude. You don't have to be that generous. Fuck Pop-Tarts.
I mean, the floating demons flying around, the floating demons in Raiders of the Lost Ark were more convincing than those bone things that jumped out of the mouths.
I do love how they fucking like pull out though. That's a pretty fun.
That is pretty cool, but they definitely ran out of money towards the end of the movie when they had to come up with CGI.
The fact that Lomagra's effects are beaten by a Gushers commercial is a little concerning.
Right. Also, bear in mind, this is like several years after Jurassic Park. So
I was going to say that.
So we know the technology exists. I mean, shit, you can go back and look at T2, and
Yep.
even though that is very rough to look at with some of the CG, it still plays better than this.
Yeah, this was 98. Jurassic Park was 93. So we had convincing CGI. So when he gets cut in half and all of his guts are like, yeah, it's like a Starburst ad like I used to watch on TV in the 80s. It was completely unconvincing, but that's neither here nor there.
I kind of want to see him just doing the Mentos commercial where it's like he gets cut in half, you hear the do 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 wah, and then just
The Fleshmaker.
Nicely
that
done.
should have been the fucking name of one of the bad guys.
Fleshmaker.
Instead of the Blood God, the Fleshmaker.
And Pearl. Shut up, Pearl. So in that fight, Frost punches Blade in the stomach, making him fly back and hit the wall. If you watch closely, his fist never comes close to hitting Blade.
Telekinesis.
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh shit. Yeah, we already kind of covered that one. That
He's a
Blade.
Also, this is a newly formed deity. He's got a tangible, actual form for the first time in how many aeons, and it happens to be that pouty, snarky prick, Deacon Frost. So it's like he's trying to figure out. It's like trying if we tried to stick Jim in a Miata. It's like, yeah, we could
That's
do
not
it.
happening.
We
unless
could
it's
do it,
convertible.
but there's gonna be a period of adjustment just to learn where all the controls are.
And not to mention that earlier on in the movie, when Udo Kier slaps the shit out of Stephen Dorff when he's first trying to translate the Vampire Bible, this is again goes back to what Eric said about dude being a shitty director. They do the slap scene full on from like a 45-degree angle instead of like over the shoulder like it usually is,
Right.
and he misses them by like 3 inches. So I think vampires are sufficiently powerful, like either the Blood God or if you're Udo Kier who's been around for a couple of hundred, maybe 1,000 years, you don't actually have to hit somebody to knock the shit out of them. You can
Right.
be a couple inches away and it still has the same effect.
Like 1-inch punch Bruce Lee shit, but just the vampire. Version.
Yeah. You can hit open air, and the shockwave, because you're so powerful with that telekinesis thing, can still knock somebody on their ass.
That's fair.
Yeah. Also, as we've seen, these vampires they are stronger, they are faster than humans. But one thing I never understood, where it's like if you look at like the vampires in Bram Stoker's Dracula versus this. These dudes, it's like one whiff of silver near them, and they just turn into like cigarette ash.
Oh, they are way easy to fucking kill. Like almost to a fucking Dusk Till Dawn level. Probably easier. And I'll give credit to an old friend, Jason White, who made this joke when we first watched the movie. Because at this point, at a point in the movie, Blade has murdered fucking 1 billion vampires.
Yeah,
And she
it's just a reaping, yes.
and she makes him this fucking blue fucking high C, and she's like, he's like, this isn't a cure. She's like, no, but if you like get into a vampire, like they'll explode, and it's like, or I could just keep shooting them, which is way easier and like is working super fucking well. So like, I can try really hard to get this fucking Gatorade into them, or I can go, brah, 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 brah. I can look, they're all ash now.
Also, missed marketing opportunity. It's like, come on, Ghostbusters had Ecto Cooler.
Ecto-Cooler.
Where was the blue raspberry Blade High C? I mean, come on, that is the most '90s bullshit marketing we should have had.
I would have bought it.
Vampires are easier to kill than it looks like, because we established early on when Blade says, you got to either shoot him or hit him in the head or the heart with the silver or the whatever it is. And then later on in the movie, he kills his mother with a bone to the navel. But they violate their own rules a little bit there.
Yeah.
So that's the bone of a werewolf that had been killed by a silver bullet.
They threw him down the pit.
They threw him down in the pit, so there was traces of silver. Because that's how werewolves are killed. When they're hit by the silver bullet, it just fucking spreads through everything.
Clearly,
that
that
breaks their
pit
body.
has some crazy powers on whatever gets thrown down into it. Because the guy, Curtis, who was the guy who worked with Karen in the lab earlier on in the movie, her ex-boyfriend, when he came back as a zombie, he somehow picked up a British accent, which I thought was fascinating. So maybe the pit has special magical powers that just changes the properties of things, and so the bone could have been infused with some kind of weird magic.
Yeah.
To quote a term that became very popular around this time, and I think even made it into Blade 2, which, God bless Guillermo del Toro, yeah, that bone shard, clearly had traces of colloidal silver, somewhere in it. So, and so just any.
Because it was a werewolf that they killed with silver and then tossed him in the pit, so the silver sunk into his bones, and that's why the bone was able to kill him.
Yeah, it just
100%.
leached in like mercury.
Makes total sense. So Chaz mentioned the high C vampire killer. Just to go back to that, I think it'd be fucking great if they made, because I would have bought this if they made that box, but instead of one straw hole, they had like 2 little straw holes on the side. I'd have been like, fuck yes, I'm buying the shit out of this.
Perfect.
Anything else you boys want to hit for movie number 1?
One real quick one.
Yes.
At the end of the movie, when because you gotta have your girl on girl fight. So when Karen is fighting the female version of one of those albino twins from The Matrix, that the crazy hair and the white dress, who somehow only managed to get splattered with blood in the first scene. She wore white the whole movie. Big waste of resources there. She's coming around the catwalk in the chamber, and Karen is trying to hit her with the shotgun, and she shoots that shotgun. She cocks and shoots that shotgun 6 times, cocks it a 7th before White Walker even gets over to her. And I looked it up. Most conventional shotguns can hold maybe 3 shells unless they're modified, and that one clearly was not. So where did the extra shells come from?
So if we're dealing with, so again, metallurgy, if we're dealing with, silver buckshot or something, it's like, that's a soft metal. You don't want like a tremendous amount of force, because otherwise it's just going to tear apart your ammunition. So just using like really tiny shells, because it's a pump action shotgun, I believe.
It is.
So it's like, you don't have to worry about the pressure for a Colt 45, where it needs a certain amount of pressure to cycle the action, as it's known.
Sure.
It's just, it went bang. I do the whole ka-chunk action. It cycles. So you could have little micro shells where it's like, it's just enough to get the ammunition out.
Micro shells.
I like it.
I'm sold.
Works for me.
Sold. All right, boys. Well, I think we've proven that Blade is a flawless film.
Man, we're batting 1,000. We're just too fucking good at this.
We can't miss.
Amazing. You can't stop us. So we're going to go on intermission for probably about 10 minutes, and then we will join back up for movie number 2, The Running Man.
Hey, Christmas tree!
Show starts in 8 minutes. Yum, yum. It's time for a tasty and refreshing snack. We promise to satisfy your hunger, your thirst, your sweet tooth. So visit our refreshment center now. Let's go! Show starts in 7 minutes.
It's refreshment time, folks.
Taste that beats the others cold. Pepsi pours it on. Taste that beats the others cold. Pepsi pours it on.
Yum, yum. It's a meal in itself. Our all-meat super dog. Enjoy one now. Show starts in 6 minutes.
As everyone knows, rainbows usually have a treasure at the end. Let's follow this one and see if we can find the pot of gold.
Father, I suppose you've come to claim me treasure.
Well, we'd like to see the gold first.
Faith in there's better than gold in here, me lad. No, just look here, no.
Candy, refreshing soft drinks, popcorn, ice cream. Well, that's some treasure, but anyone can buy luscious treats like these at the snack bar.
You don't tell me. Do you suppose you could get me a job as a snack bar attendant?
Show starts in 5 minutes.
We're
We're happy to have you with us this evening and want you to enjoy every minute of your stay here. And while you relax and stretch, visit our concession where you'll find something to please you. There are ice-cold drinks, delicious sandwiches, ice cream, coffee and snacks, and many other pleasing treats. Our foods are fresh and tasty, our drinks satisfying and refreshing. They're so good.
You get more out of life when you go out to a movie.
Show starts in 4 minutes.
Visit our snack bar and treat yourself to some delicious Castleberry's pit-cooked barbecue sandwiches. Cook the Castleberry way, slowly over open pits of glowing charcoal, then seasoned with a sauce that's zesty, yet delightfully mild to please the entire family. Also at the snack bar, you'll find popcorn and soft drinks and candy and French fries to go with your Castleberry's barbecue sandwiches. There's plenty of time before the movie starts, so visit our snack bar right now for Castleberry's pit-cooked barbecue sandwiches.
Still plenty of time to come and be served at the refreshment center before showtime.
Show starts in 3 minutes. Show starts in 2 minutes.
Your attention, please. All new Hotshot electric in-car heaters have been installed for your comfort and convenience. Just insert heater through car window and turn on the switch. When leaving, please turn switch off and replace on speaker post. Warning, high voltage. For your own safety, do not attempt to repair or remove wires. Do not attempt to open heater unit. If you need assistance, please notify the theater box office or concession manager.
Show starts in 1 minute.
Please remember to replace the speaker on the post when you leave the theater.
Alrighty, welcome back to the second half of our Missed Takes Live double feature. For a reintroduction, as we are now on our second film. With me, as always, is the delightful Eric.
Me!
That's him. And our guest today, returning for another Mistakes, a Mistakes All-Star, Jim.
Love you.
I need to pull up my notes for this. All right, so it took me a second to pull up my notes for this movie because I'm stupid and didn't have them ready. But this movie happens to be...
Running Man, 1987.
Fucking love this movie. I love it so much. I will not pretend that it's necessarily good per se, but I fucking love it.
So how could a movie this hokey, this wonky, be so prophetic?
Oh my!
Honestly.
Well, first of all, I'll explain my beer in a minute. Right now, and then we'll get directly fucking into that. So this is a Combat Marshmallow double stout from it's a solemn, delightful beer. I believe Jim is still drinking Crystal Light, which there's crystal.
Because my fat ass wants to live past 50, so
crystals in the movie, I guess.
All right, I'm going just plain old, straight up, simple Rev Pills because gotta have a revolution. But also, this just reminded me of, like this kind of bare bones marketing. This looks like the Cadre Cola can. Like this would be on the.
Oh, nice.
Good call.
So
yeah,
I'll be alternating between that and some limoncello La Croix because I am just that bougie.
Just to get right into the fucking hot takes. Oh my god, did that opening scrawl hit a little too close to home, right? I was like, oh, fucking, this whole thing is yikes. Where it's like, first off, it's allegedly 3 years ago, but it's like, oh, everything's turned into a paramilitary state, everything's a shithole. You're like, oh no.
Right here, it says, by 2017, the world economy has collapsed. Food, natural resources, and oil are in short supply. A police state divided into paramilitary zones rules with an iron hand. I mean, first of all, that's a ding, because they were 3 years off. So, I mean...
Stupid movie. Well, and the thing is, it's like, I remember seeing this as a kid, and like, it's this insane future dystopia where you're like, oh my god, how horrible would that be? And now it's like, oh, that's a Wednesday. Okay, that's fine.
We're like 20 minutes away from people killing each other on television at this point.
Yeah,
it's like, honestly, seriously, if like Fox or some TV network, not even like some esoteric like streaming service or like little visited like online like YouTube channel, but if like fucking like one of the major carriers came over and said, hey, we're doing Climbing for Dollars starting August 1st, would you even bat an eye? Would you even fucking go like,
I'd be like, that checks out.
No, you'd be sitting there just going like, pass.
Yeah, I'd be like,
I'm going to thumbs down that in my suggestions.
These are detained immigrants and they're climbing for citizenship or they'll get eaten by dogs. I'd be like, yeah, that checks out.
Like, yeah, no, if Fox
coming out of the cage and I'm doing just fine. Gotta climb the rope. Gotta get the green card. Yeah. Oh shit! We live in a horrible timeline, guys.
Climbing for green cards. No, this is honestly the timeline where I think Marty McFly fucked his mama in that car at prom. So,
Chaz wants to be.
I'm glad we vote Back in the Future because that's going to come up later.
Chaz wants to be in the Robot Jox Cage of Death.
God.
We need to do Robot Jox actually.
Oh no, dude! I just rewatched that. Like, I'll bring that up in my plug at the end of this.
So, just to give you a positive spin on the tune of the fucking opening scroll where it's like fucking yikes. The flip side of that is when she walks into her home and she's like, lights on, coffee, blah blah blah, and again as a kid it's like, oh my god, like what an amazing future.
Our home's predicted.
That's impossible, and it's like I can do 90% of that right now. I'm sure, just like from the 47 Echo devices in my house.
Yeah, Alexa, toasting coffee.
Yeah, exactly. Another thing, so the something that my lovely girlfriend Melissa noticed immediately, the super iconic theme, the Harold Faltermeyer theme that runs throughout this movie is almost fucking identical to the Shinra theme from Final Fantasy VII. So
yeah,
they're like not even like it's like it's an homage. It's fucking Stairway to Heaven and fucking Spirit, right? So they just fucking lifted it, and they were like, "We'll change the last couple notes and say it's different." Fine.
It is the Vanilla Ice dun 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 dun. Idea where it's like, okay,
we added the extra note in it. It's not plagiarized.
Dropped in one note, and you changed the pitch like a hair.
Mm-hmm.
Like you're not fooling anybody.
Another thing I'll say, since I'm not monopolizing hot takes, fuck you. I wish every TV show that I watched, from The Masked Singer to Chopped to whatever else, started with like a 5 to 10 minute jazzercise fucking
okay, yeah, all right.
presentation.
So you do know who the choreographer was for the ICS dancers?
No, enlighten us.
I do not.
Okay.
If it's the director of Blade, I'm fucking done.
No, but it is apropos to the Hot Wings challenge because it does tie back to a question Melissa asked when we were doing the Hot Wings, which is, it's Paula Abdul. This was like
holy shit, really?
Oh wow.
This was her like just after she broke away from the Laker girls, because she used to be part of that cheerleading squad, or like the head of it, and right before her album dropped, this was her choreographing for Hollywood.
That's fantastic.
I've already decided that I want the somber funeral dancing at my own funeral. Like, I want that. I just want like Ryan was amazing, and all these chicks just come out like I fucking need that.
Yeah, and like in spangly, like veiled,
yes,
outfits.
100% need
with
like
just Aquanet and like 80s tricolor eye makeup. That you have to have that.
Fucking need.
It's actually a shame that you will outlive me because I want to see that.
Okay, so here's something I will confess.
I piss people off all the time. I probably want to outlive you. Go on.
So this might be a TMI moment, but it's honestly, it's like if and when I get a girlfriend, if she walked out like one Halloween going, oh, I'm going to do an outfit from a movie, and just to do it to not even be like a slutty version, but just I'm going to cosplay something from The Running Man. And if she came out in either that onesie tracksuit that they have everyone squeezed into, or that blue like sling bikini ensemble for the opening dance,
with the navel window.
Yes, with the navel window.
God bless a navel window.
Marriage, like in a heartbeat.
No, honestly, I'd take anything. She came out like Buzzsaw. I'd be like, let's do this.
Lifting a dirt bike with like a giant head hanging over her,
like,
weightlifting.
We're getting married tonight.
If I found a woman like that, I'd just be like, sure, I'll marry you. Just don't kill me.
So other things that they got right in terms of being prophetic. This movie predicted deep fakes, which I did not remember until I watched this.
Oh, that's right.
That was impressive. Booking travel on the internet.
Yep.
That was kind of interesting. And
but
the one thing that really that threw me also was I remember just recently I watched the Josh Gad has this delightful YouTube series where he reunites cast of old movies. I'm sure you've seen. He's done a bunch of them. And I watched the Back to the Future one, and I'm like, Leah Thompson has not aged a goddamn day. And it's funny because, like, when they skip forward to the future in the second movie, I think it was.
Second movie, yes.
They age her to 2015, and she kind of looks like she's aged till 2015. But then I watched her on that special, and she still looks exactly like Lorraine
she looks
from
like
1955.
Yeah, she looks like it's like, she stopped aging around 95. Yeah. Just the makeup changed and the hair.
Speaking of age makeup, they kind of nailed Mick Fleetwood at 70. I mean, if
they
you can see
did.
that.
Holy shit, they did.
Yeah.
Yeah, good job. Good job.
That impressed me. I thought that was pretty spot on.
Good job.
Also, for all the things that they got right, they did miss the idea that, like, clearly Star Trek still part of the pop culture. So the Mr. Spock reference, that's on that dude. He just had a shitty upbringing.
Yeah.
But one of the most powerful men in the country at this moment in history, in the movie and in real life, is a corrupt game show host. So
that's funny. I didn't think about television.
That. Right. So it's like, yeah, and peddling fake news. This is just one of those things where it's like, God, this movie hits close to home, and I don't want it to.
Yeah, it was watching this going, what a dystopian crapsack world, and we're living in it. Exactly.
Like, honestly, the only other movie that I've seen recently that I can think of that got this close to like where it's like, oh, it's dystopian, there's a major economic downturn, was the Death Race remake with Jason Statham.
See, I thought you were going to say Contagion, because that one too.
Also,
Look,
guys, we all know 2020 fucking blows, all right?
Sorry, I don't want to get political.
But that's funny. Yeah, I think the only thing this is missing is a social media aspect, where there needs to be a social media thing where someone's posting, here's the real video of Ben Richards. No bullshit. Here's the real video of Ben Richards. That's just what the media wants you to believe. It's like
the denouement of this movie is very cute in that it assumes that large crowds of people who've already made up their minds what the truth is could be swayed when you actually air the real footage, because that doesn't happen.
Oh my god, yeah, I didn't think about that. That's not true at all.
I so want to just see if there's like an Instagram or Twitter account that is just made up for the stalkers from ICS, where like just buzzsaw on Twitter.
Somebody could come up with a piece of footage of Trump dropping like 6 N-words in 10 seconds and grabbing his own daughter by the crotch and air it, and people would still be like, well, that's not what Sean Hannity said.
Yeah, that's not real. Like, I know this thing said Killian is lying to you, but Tucker Carlson told me that Killian isn't lying to us, so it's fine. All right, so on that note, let's get into the...
Also, Professor Sub-Zero has vouched that COVID is a hoax.
Yes,
and he's a professor. It says so right there in his name.
Oh yeah, what is up with that? I wanted to look that up and I forgot. Like, the fact that is he professor and an actor? Is Professor his name somehow? Like, what is up with that? I was so
looked him up,
fascinated by
that. That was one of the things I wondered about because they made a vague reference to sushi, and I thought, now unless this dude's actually Japanese, that's going to be pretty racist. So I wanted to make sure that I looked it up. And apparently he is of Japanese heritage, but was born and raised in Hawaii, and his last name was originally Kalani. He adopted Professor when he went into professional wrestling because, you know, I mean, you can be whatever you want in wrestling. You could be Doctor this. Or
That's what I fucking wondered. I was
Man.
like, I bet this is a fucking stage name. Like,
It is.
and
Professor Toru Tanaka was his wrestling name. His
Yeah.
actual last name, I don't remember his first name, but his name was Kalani, and he was born in Hawaii.
but the point is, he doesn't have a fucking PhD in economics. He's a PhD in bringing the pain. That's the important part.
He is a professor the same way that Dr. Pepper is a fucking doctor.
And
Chad says he's in The Last Action Hero and a friend of Arnold. Wait, in The Last Action Hero or just in general? Probably both. Oh,
Yes.
Speaking of Charles Dance and movies that make me cry. but that's another. That's a fucking 3-hour special. We'll need to fucking set aside a weekend to work our way through.
That sounds like I got to break out the whiskey. All right.
Yeah.
I got to build up to that.
So
All right.
in the fight scene where Arnold is fighting the professor,
Yes.
he gets cut on barbed wire and leaves a bloody tear on the chest of his fancy spandex bodysuit. In the very next scene, the suit is clean and the rip is gone.
Well, in the future, we already have self-healing cutting boards, and we have fabrics that I've seen. They're not in mass production yet, but you can pierce a piece of fabric, and it's sort of the polymers will knit back together again, kind of like because they got kind of a silly putty aspect to them, where they sort of self-weld and self-heal. So I'm guessing in order to preserve the illusion for television, they've made those jumpsuits out of self-healing fabric. But at some point, you know, they take enough abuse and they do fail because there are tears that persist throughout the film. But I think in the early stages, because Sub-Zero was really the first fight, I think the suit was still working as intended well enough that any tears would still heal up in the suit.
And I think, I mean, you know, all technology is flawed, so maybe it doesn't always heal, but fundamentally it's supposed to. And maybe as it gets used, it doesn't heal as well. But I think probably the reason they do that is just they kind of know, you know, that this is live, but they're going to edit shit on the fly because they cut to commercials and they show pre-aired stuff. So they're like, look, if we need to show shit out of order for consistency's sake, we need the suit to constantly look like a fresh suit. That's why it needs to heal. So like if they want to, if for whatever reason they need to show things in reverse order, like scenes and you switch the order around, the suit won't give it away. So I think it's a combination of modern technology and just
it's put in there just to help sell the illusion that it's like, no, they've got a fighting chance. Like just anyone can. You got a chance to win this. It's not just televised executions.
Right.
No.
Right.
So in reference to that first fight, something that I noticed was after Sub-Zero knocks down Laughlin and Weiss, there's one scene where Ben says, "Come on, Weiss, we got to get out of here," and he goes to pick him up, and it's a very fast, like almost swish pan where Arnold Schwarzenegger is whipping his head from side to side. There's a line happening, but his lips don't move, so there was definitely some ADR happening there, you know, from a filmmaking standpoint. But obviously, there's no mistakes from a filmmaking standpoint. I got to figure out. I need you guys to help me figure out why there was a vocalized line happening, but his mouth wasn't moving as he was picking his friends up off the ice.
So I'm guessing that this was. It's like it's a build-off or a spin-off of the little bleep button to make sure that it's like, oh, okay, it's getting intense now. We can't have him swearing on network TV. That's still not cool. So they're just like, we're just going to hold that off like a 2-second delay, but they can't delay the video signal as well. So, it goes out of sync for just a second.
But I'll kind of double down on that a little bit, and I'll say that kind of almost leading into the deepfake thing, they kind of have just a bunch of Ben audio clips that they've kind of already cobbled together, so that if he tries to say anything like Killian's fucking lying, they can just press a button, and maybe some fucking tech just hit that fucking button accidentally, or maybe. You know,
they've already demonstrated they're willing to monkey wrench the footage to make it seem like he said things he didn't when they did the intro.
Right. So that's just them, and maybe that was just them giving it a test run of just like, let's make sure that, you know, the fucking pipes are clean here, and they fucking hit it. Right. And so that's just them pumping in some pre-made audio, and he doesn't react to it because he's got fucking other shit to worry about.
Yeah. Also, he's not hearing it. Like, he's mic'd up, but he can't hear what is being broadcast. So he could be reciting the Gettysburg Address or saying it's like ICS is a lie, and it's just gonna be like, no, we're gonna show you being just, you're not saying a fuck, we're just gonna show you going, and
Which actually,
He never does that.
That's funny because in the deep faked fight where he's fighting, where the stunt double's fighting Jesse Ventura, he doesn't say anything, but he makes a whole lot of. So they're just fucking mashing that fucking Ben Richards button like over and over again. That's all they fucking have. So yeah.
Yeah.
Can you imagine him, like Schwarzenegger, in the recording booth, just like doing the ADR for those scenes and for the pickups, just like, what do you want me to sound like? Like you're gagging on a Brussels sprout? I don't.
Perfect.
Speaking of ADR, there was another thing that kind of also bothered me, where it looked like could have benefited from a little ADR. There's the scene where Dynamo shocks Amber and Weiss as they're looking up the code for the uplink. Right. Amber and Weiss, excellent co-stars, also excellent beers, which I thought was interesting. Amber, Weiss, Killian, Fireball. A lot of people named after booze in this movie.
Oh my
I definitely didn't pick up until this particular viewing. But Dynamo
oh my god.
Them, and he's walking up to them, and he's doing the real slow, sort of like villain approach, and his lips are moving, but there's no sound coming out. He clearly said a line there that somebody decided to just dial down the volume on, and I don't read lips, I couldn't make it out, but his like bloated LED-covered ass is walking up to the screen going like, he's saying something, and we don't hear it.
Well, so I think that's an easy one. I think Dynamo is the least confident, realistically, out of all of them. Like, Buzzsaw doesn't give a fuck. Buzzsaw's just gonna go be Buzzsaw.
But Dynamo starts crying the second his race car top.
Right. So he's the only one yelling cut. Right. So he's the one who's so fucking concerned and has that wavering confidence in what's he's just like he's not speaking, but he's like, when you're gonna go fucking tell someone off and you're like, I'm gonna fucking say this, and I'm gonna fucking tell you take this job and fucking shove it. I don't need your fucking paycheck. So that's all it is. He's like, this is what I'm gonna fucking say, and then he never gets to do it. But that's it.
He's workshopping a line to say something really creepy and pervy to Amber, and they're just like, and like someone in ICS is like, oh no,
just don't. We don't need his speed for that. Or again, it could be him trying to look tough, but going red leather, yellow leather, red leather, yellow leather.
He's doing a warm up exercise, just like.
He's going to deliver some pithy villain one-liner, and then he doesn't get a chance to do it. He's practicing. He's doing that thing that people with anxiety do, where they rehearse social interactions.
Yes, exactly.
Okay, gotcha.
Which purely as a side note, like I love all Arnold one-liners for the history of time, but there's some fucking stretches in this one. Like,
oh yeah,
like
this one's full.
Like there's somewhere it's like they just gave him the first one they thought of, and they're like, you didn't want to fucking workshop that one for a while. And maybe like Buzzsaw had to split. Great, fucking love that one.
Would you care for a lift? As he throws the dummy over the railing.
Right, so that's pretty good. But like, Sub-Zero now, Plane Zero. You know what? I'm gonna do that again.
Like, oh god, if you want to see something actually like this is fucking fantastic, I think you can find it on YouTube. If you want to see him workshop a one-liner, there is a whole montage of him putting the pipe through Bennett from Commando, and just all the different variations that he ran through before he settled on, let off some steam, Bennett. It's like, you look a little hot under the collar. Or just let it... It's like, it is...
Let's lay some pipe! No.
It is a workshop.
And to think I once told you to get the lead out.
Exactly. It is fantastic.
Random trivia question. In how many movies does Arnie say, I'll be back, including meta references to it? So not necessarily the phrase, I'll be back, but he's kind of like making a joke about the fact that he always says, I'll be back. So when is that line either specifically said or clearly referenced in how many movies?
I'm going to go with somewhere like over 6 and under all of them.
Technically
correct. Eric, what's your guess?
Yeah. Shit. I'll do the Price is Right. So I'm gonna go. I'm gonna go 5.
It is 12.
Oh my god.
12 movies. Yeah, there says I'll be back, or he says like I might be back, or he said like something along those lines, referencing it. Ooh, Chad said 14. He was so close, but technically over by Eric's Price is Right rules. So Jim wins. Show's over. Bye, everybody.
You want to do a horse costume? Okay, you be front. I'll be back.
Yeah, exactly. Let's pretend we're Mozart. Let's pretend we're composers. You be Mozart, I'll be Bach. Counts. It's fine. In one of the scenes where Arnold is running through piles of debris, not the delightful New Orleans sandwich, but actual debris, an explosion behind him causes him to fly through the air. The mechanism that launches him in the air can clearly be seen flipped up from the ground.
Okay, that's an easy one. We've already established that Killian is a liar, and ICS and the Running Man cheat. So there was probably, just like when he took Buzzsaw out on the motorcycle by wrapping the airline cable around the pipe and yanking him right off the bike, at some point, one of the people running behind him, probably unseen on camera, didn't make the cut, came up behind him and clipped a carabiner to like the back of a steel cage inside of his suit or something.
Okay.
And so when the explosion happened, in order to make sure that he was blown back by it, they just hit some kind of a tension winch and boink, yanked him right out, because the game cheats and they only care what looks good on television. They knew nobody would question it. So it's clearly a function of the show that we just didn't see the setup of.
Slight tangent to that. I was going to just say something very similar, where it's like, clearly this was a dead spot. Like, they've got all the tracking stuff in them so that they can be found by the stalkers. And it's like, okay, look, they're still getting there. It's like, it's going to take them another 5 minutes to clear that. So they had like a pre-recorded or pre-rendered little segment where it's like, oh, we'll just lead into the actual fight, because there's no indication that this is happening in real time from the audience's perspective.
That's true. There's some, like, there's a lot of fucking time gaps where it's presented like you're seeing it live, but they're fucking playing with that shit a lot.
That mechanism, it was a stunt mechanism where it's like, okay, wait, that is a badass intro, and we can splice that into the actual footage that we got 4 minutes ago from that quad. And then it's just like, okay, and then we'll just let it run, and then we'll just do the next round of commercials.
So that leads into, and now I'm going to make you answer better than delayed video, because when they're showing off the stalkers in different ways, they're showing off video clips from shit that hasn't happened yet. They're just, because they didn't film their different intros, they're just showing video from what's about to happen to Ben Richards in 5 minutes.
Yeah. Okay. So it's like, with the intro videos, the stalkers, for as dangerous as they are, they're effectively wrestlers.
Right.
Yeah. So they've got an intro, they've got the music, they've got the cinematography. It's just like anything else that you would see in like the WWE or AEW or NXT, where it's like, look, you got an audio cue, you got choreography, that doesn't change. It's,
Oh, that makes sense. So even their fights are essentially choreographed. So it looks like we're seeing what hasn't happened yet, but in reality, they just do the same fucking shit every time.
They got a range of basic moves like wrestlers do that they kind of fall back on.
Right.
And it's and for the intro, so it's like, of course they're going to show the intro for Fireball, where it looks like he's kind of floating backwards and coming down and firing the flamethrower, because that's the shit he does every week when he fights.
Gotcha. Okay.
The audience counts on consistency and a recognized move set from their favorite stalkers.
It's all about branding. So it's like, it's no different from when you would hear the glass break cue for when Stone Cold Austin would come down the ramp, or the organ music for for the Undertaker. It's the same fucking thing, where it's like, okay, cue up the Fireball drop sequence, and then let's get right into it.
We got to keep kayfabe, so what we're going to do is we're going to have some ready-to-go stock footage of like a dude in a yellow jumpsuit getting yanked away from an explosion, and the audience doesn't give a shit if they see that 3 or 4 times a week, or it doesn't matter, because it's the same piece of footage, and it's satisfying, and it works every time. We give the audience what they want. Killian even says that at the end of the movie. Oh, we give the audience what they want. So if you got to reuse some footage now and again, nobody's going to complain about that.
That's fair. When Killian's guard goes to enter his code to open the gate starts to open when he touches the first digit rather than the last digit.
I got it. Nope. It's autofill. It's just autofill technology. You see it in Google, Amazon, ordering.
One more thing this movie predicted.
Just one more thing this movie predicted, where it's like, it can tell from the fingerprint and the code. It's just, okay, it's Sven.
Okay, it's you. Okay, fine. Yeah. All right.
Okay, so if we establish when we introduce Buzzsaw as the first stalker out, Killian says his buzzsaws can cut through solid steel, and he demonstrates this by wheeling around and slicing apart a piece of scenery on the set. But later on, when he's trying to take Ben out in the actual battle arena, that saw bounces off a couple of I-beams. I thought it could cut through solid steel. What's the deal with the saws? Are they powerful or are they not powerful?
Well, so I'm gonna say so those particular beams aren't steel. Right? There's because there's those are made of like some crazy fucking vibranium shit, but it's just like there's certain things where it's like some stuff is made. Well, even to back that scale down a bit, a lot of this scenery is made to look destructible. So look, it's steel, but for the show, you know, they'll let it get fucking ripped apart pretty easily. But the shit that's actually fucking like important and load bearing, like we're not gonna let your fucking saw cut through that, you dumb shit. You know how many fucking acres of fucking that kill field?
Like Eric said, they're wrestlers. So like the steel beams is kind of like the steel chair.
Yeah. So
Right.
so yeah,
I'm sure
100%.
I'm sure also if they panned the camera like 45 degrees left or right, you would see like branding logos on the side of that steel beam where it's like Rayovac or KFC.
Yeah, and you can't fucking destroy that. Like that's
It's like,
the
no.
fucking contract.
We've got another 18 months and another 20.2 million tied up in that KFC contract. You ain't touching shit on that.
Right,
It's made out of the same material they make the Cadre soda cans out of.
And if you have like a saw that's gonna cut through like wood or tile, like that saw won't actually cut through steel, but you can say it will because if it hits my fucking arm, it's still gonna fucking suck. So like, on a human being, you can't recognize the difference. So yeah, so I think it's those I-beams probably are steel. They're probably not anything special, but the saw is just for show to some extent, and everything else is destructible scene.
It's Triple H's sledgehammer.
Right, yeah.
It's the elbow pad for the Rock. It's show.
Yeah.
And I think you're right, because I sort of question the integrity of the saws anyway, because we flip back and forth from over-the-shoulder angles of both Ben and Buzzsaw in the scene right before he gives them he turns the saw around and gives them the emergency scrotaldectomy right there. But in one scene, like when Arnold is holding the saw is like an inch from his face, and that blade is whirring so fast you can't see the individual teeth on it. But when we flip back to the other angle and we see Buzzsaw's face, the chain on the saw is not running, even though we hear the engine going.
Safety feature.
Yeah, so safety feature, but that safety feature essentially backfires because why would you ever think it's going to come up to the crotch? Like it's full on set to like it's not going to hit his arm, it's not going to hit his face, right? But like down there, like it wasn't even like fucking set for. They didn't set it for don't fucking cut your own balls off. Like they didn't go that far with it.
If we're gonna kind of extrapolate from what we've seen for ICS, it's like, look, they know life is cheap. They do not care. They lie. They cheat. They will run shit out of sequence to support their narrative. So you gotta have to think it's like in corporate culture, if their employee, because that's what he is as a stalker,
he signed the contract.
Allows himself to be put in that position, it's like, well, clearly you're not up to snuff anymore, so you're out. It's like, what, you're going to save me? No. If you can't save yourself in this position, you are not worth our time and resources.
So that's interesting. So it got to a point where they were like, okay, you look like a fucking chooch. No one's going to buy your action figure anymore. So bye. Like later, bro.
Look bad. Protection off. Zip.
Right.
Oh, well.
By that.
Cold-blooded. Yeah.
Cool.
All right, so in the scene where we have we have a couple of rock stars in this movie. Dweezil Zappa plays the head of the Resistance, and Mick Fleetwood, of course, is in it. And in the scenes where we have the uncredited cameo of Carlos Santana, who's up on the stage taking the bets from all the people in the alleyway.
Holy shit! I didn't know that. Carlos Santana.
Yeah, well, it wasn't actually him, but I took a picture because it kind of.
It fucking looks exactly.
Yeah, he does. He looks exactly like him.
Money.
But behind him on the board, throughout the entire movie. Sub-Zero is misspelled as Zub-Zero on the betting board where they're taking all the odds. And I'm wondering, is that just like a language barrier thing because English isn't his first language? Or why is that happening?
No. This is actually really easy. And I accidentally alluded to it in an earlier Facebook chat. This is a universe in which Mortal Kombat also exists. So there's a separate betting ring that they have going for Mortal Kombat. So purely within the realm of their gambling, they want to make sure they can differentiate between Sub-Zero, who's battling for Earthrealm, and the Sub-Zero who's in Running Man. So they just kind of like purely for internal clarification, you bet on Sub-Zero.
Because so we're predicting that esports and particularly Midway or Chaos Games or Chaos Realms has survived. Like they made it.
Well, and I think
lasted.
this world is already clearly a scenario where we lost our 10th fucking one, and Outworld already fucking came, right? So, but Mortal Kombat still
hanging
continues.
out in the Running Man universe is what's left over after Shang Tsung has his way with our realm.
Right, which is, so you're the midway behind you is now even more appropriate. So your background is super appropriate. So yeah, it's pure.
So is the major overlord Shao Kahn? No, it's some dude we found in Long Beach named Killian. Yeah.
Right. So it's purely just the fact that they have bets running for Mortal Kombat. They have bets running for the Running Man. They don't want any confusion.
So what I think is also interesting is this kind of a throwback to our previous episode is that Mortal Kombat clearly exists in both these universes then, because I noticed a very interesting background. Because I've seen the original Mortal Kombat movie way more times than I probably should cop to.
That's fine.
But there's a scene at Frost's party in Blade where when he eats the cop and dumps him in the pool, and Mortal Kombat in two different scenes is playing on a television in the background.
Yep. So that's not the film Mortal Kombat playing. That's them watching a Mortal Kombat because it's real and bettable in these worlds.
It was blurry as fuck, but I noticed it in a couple of different scenes.
No, and I remember you also hear reptiles screech.
Yeah, there's Liu Kang on TV behind somebody, and then one of the Outworld. It's blurry as hell.
You gotta go more center on your
statues.
Okay, there you go.
That's one of the statues in the background, and then Liu Kang is actually on the TV right there. And then, the reptile scream. Right when we first meet the little girl who's going to kick his ass in the vampire library, we have reptile getting sucked into the statue.
I'll be damned. So Mortal Kombat exists, and all three of these movies exist in the same universe.
They do.
So does this mean that the Bachman universe, which is also tied into the Die Hard universe, is technically tied into the Mortal Kombat universe?
Yeah. Oh, and I can go a layer deeper on that. I actually also am ready to propose that this movie is also tied into the View Askew universe. This is a Kevin Smith movie because when did Mallrats come out? In like 1995 or 1996, and then this movie is set in 2017. So in both of those, we have a beefy, mute, blue-shirted security guard that happens to be
DeForest.
Holy shit! Got DeForest on steroids.
I think the Sven we see in Running Man is I'm going to propose LaForge's son from Mallrats. So we've got several overlapping film universes in this film.
I see no reason to disagree with that.
Yeah, so if people are wondering how we bring in the Die Hard universe, Philip D'Souza is one of the writers credited on this screenplay of this actual historical event, and he is one of the writers credited on Die Hard, along with John McTiernan. So
it's wheels within wheels, ladies and gentlemen. It's all connected, even more so than the MCU.
Honestly, if the news footage had Mary Ellen Trainor doing that as Gail Wallens from Die Hard, I wouldn't have even caught it.
That checks out.
I just looked at me going, yeah, perfect. It
works. That totally tracks. Yeah.
So in the beginning of the movie, right before the Bakersfield massacre, I've actually got two about this, but we're going to start with the geography one.
Right.
The first coordinate we see is, I'm probably going to fuck this up, 29 degrees, 43 north by 119 degrees, 23 west, off the coast of Baja, California. The last coordinate we see is 45 degrees, 4 north by 119, 8 degrees west. I might have fucked that up, it's okay. And it's in northeast Oregon. So in the 35 seconds between these two scenes, Arnold's helicopter traveled 1,050 miles.
I'm going to say that is down to kind of the fact that, if ICS is running things, and we've seen how much they are all about me, that is his position relative to their closest broadcast center.
Oh, I see.
It's it's like how close is the nearest central hub of their network, where it's Prime Meridian, Equator, North South Pole. Fuck that noise. No. We're the center of the universe. We're the center of this world. Therefore,
whichever tower you're pinging off of.
So Chaz says tectonic plates shifted. Also possible in this dystopia that California and Oregon they're right here now, and there's an Arizona Bay.
Almost a Judge Dredd thing where all the cities just kind of grow together into one massive metropolis. So Bakersfield, California, Portland, Oregon. It's only a couple of zip codes away. So what's the difference anyway?
So in the grand scheme of the Port Angeles landscape, this would explain how they have like 400 square blocks just sitting around going, it's like, should we fix that?
So the
No, let's put a game show in it. Why not?
the second problem with that shot is in the edited, the raw, and everything. The last thing you see is Arnie taking a fucking gun butt to the face, but it's from his point of view. So what is up with this? Why would you see it from his point of view?
Again, I know we're going to harp on this, but it's a central theme of the movie. ICS wants to control the narrative, so they are going to have cameras all over every piece, since they do state that in the opening crawl, they control the police force.
Oh, so
like,
it's
even the security
body
guards are
cam.
branded. Like, you look at the little logo, it doesn't say, like, LAPD, it says ICS.
You're right, yeah.
So they've got body cam, footage all over that they don't even know about. It's totally, without their knowledge or consent, but it's because ICS needs to know and control every aspect of the narrative that is coming in, whether it's a prison guard, a cop, whatever.
Or it could even have been like a Google Glass, like a corneal implant, or even like a contact lens with a tiny micro camera in it, just so that they could. He was a cop. It's their version of body cams.
Right.
Yeah,
so and to spin off to what I'm sure will come up later, or someone is asking themselves right now, it's like, okay, wait, how could there be edited and raw footage of an attack that didn't happen, showing what's happening inside the chopper from very compelling cinematic angles? It's because that chopper, like a cop car would be today, it's like you've got a dash cam, a door cam, a backup cam, a headlight cam.
It's like fucking Truman Show almost. It's just there's cameras and everything.
Exactly.
You can catch every angle of everything.
And
Makes
they're
sense
just
to me.
cobbling together where it's like, oh, we want to tell this side of the narrative and really lean on this. We'll just switch this around and hey presto.
So when
I'll buy it.
when they're getting their explosive collars removed, one of Mick Fleetwood's men gives Arnold Schwarzenegger a cigarette, and less than 30 seconds later, it is magically a large cigar.
I think in this. Go ahead. Yeah.
I was gonna say it's their version of the dehydrated pizza from Back to the Future 2.
Whoop, whoop.
Like, it's like, yes, I can carry around an entire humidor inside this little cigarette pack, and as soon as
All right, that makes sense. Or like
just here, and also it's like,
like Fifth Element chicken good, cigar good. Like,
yeah.
Like once you light it, it's like, pwah! All right, that's fair. I like it.
Either that or like I think like we talked about me and a Miata. I think Arnold with a cigarette would look ridiculous because he's very famously a cigar chomping guy. So I think maybe one of his men offered him a cigarette and he's no, I'm not smoking this tiny baby cigar, and he ditches it off screen and pulls one of the stogies out of his pants pocket or something.
No, that's not man love. He took it, he swallowed it, and said, "Now give me something to smoke." And they're like, okay.
Also, I mean, bear in mind, like Schwarzenegger doesn't want anything to do. He just wants the collar off, and he just wants to get the fuck out of the city. So it's like, oh yeah, how about a cigarette? How about you blow me? I've got my own. I don't need anything from you guys. Just get this thing off from around my neck.
That's true.
Thanks for the candy cigarette. I got one from Cuba.
Yeah.
So what else do you boys have?
All right, so I've got one. When they are actually sent into the game show, like they've done the whole intro, and great way to get contestants to a game center because, and this will also keep in the whole idea of like, okay, wait, they're in a studio, and yet the game is taking place in this, what they say, 400 square blocks of what used to be downtown LA. So that rocket sled has to pull double duty of not only filling time, but also transpo from the studio to the actual game center, which could be like across town.
Mm-hmm.
Here's the thing, though. They launch Arnie, then they launch Laughlin, and they launch Weiss. Now, Arnie hits the net. You know, it takes him a little while. It's not like a NASCAR pit crew. They just yank him out, get him going. It wasn't that big a delay between launching Laughlin and Weiss after him. How are they not smashing in? How are they not like immediately rear-ending into his sled?
I got this. I don't think the setup is the same. The landing zone is the same with the pad and the snow fence net, but I think it's kind of like when you go to to play mini golf. You hit the ball into a tube and it can come out one of a couple of dozen tubes. I think at some point it's either like a vacuum thing, like the Hyperloop, or else they do some kind of like railroad track, switch track thing to make these guys come out in different areas, because you definitely see them all run past the Cadre Cola billboard. But I think in order to make sure that they maintain the flow of the show, they launch them all down the same tube. But at some point, it branches off, and it's a crapshoot, whichever one you come out of when you actually land at the end.
And to Eric's point, both about continuity and branding,
yeah,
we don't know that's the same billboard. It could be an identical billboard, an identical setup for maximum possible branding and for continuity and editing sake.
Because there's clearly one billboard that's like wired with explosives, as we come to find out.
Yeah.
Right. Also, from a
That hit the spot.
if you have multiple stations set up where you're going to get to see the rocket sleds arrive, there are spectators on the railings overhead watching. It's like, why just sell one set of tickets where it's like, oh yeah, I got landing pad tickets for the Running Man. It's like, why sell one set of tickets where it's like, yeah, we can sell 5 different landing zones, and there's no guarantee that those schmucks are going to actually see anything.
Maximize those profits and screw over the people.
Right. It's like, oh, I was at a landing zone seat, and the guy didn't land there. Tough shit. No refunds. Exit through the gift shop.
You signed the waiver. Go to hell.
Yeah. Waivers and this, no, we just tell you what to do. We're ICS, your news and entertainment.
We own you. You know it. You're going to take whatever Here's your copy of the Running Man home game. Fuck off back to your hovel downtown.
You paid $100,000 for ringside, and the fight lasted 10 seconds. Sorry, don't have to fucking tell you.
Real quick, with all so I actually just backed to Kickstarter for They Live, Assault on Station 34 or 54. How is there not a tabletop version of the Running Man?
Well, there's clearly a home game. There's clearly a home game that comes in the big old Monopoly.
We saw it.
Yeah. Where is that? We need that. Of this group of people, why doesn't Tabletop Simulator have that?
Well, clearly we need to create it. So would you play as stalkers, or would you play evading the stalkers, or would you play there's a team of stalkers and there's a team of...
Everybody rolls dice. Whoever rolls the lowest has to be the Running Man. Whoever else, gets to be the stalkers, and then you have to take each other out, and whoever wins wins. And
and there needs to clearly be a separate gambling mechanic where you're betting on who gets the next kill. All right.
I mean,
you know what? Forget this fucking movie podcast bullshit. We're gonna make a game.
It's like Rick and Morty season 4. Do you want to design my app?
Exactly. Anything else, lads?
Yeah, I got a couple of little tiny things. When Fireball comes out of semi-retirement and goes to suit up and goes out there, I'm not really sure how the plastic barrels that Ben throws at him somehow change to steel barrels in midair. So I'm hoping one of you guys can clear that up for me. They're clearly round-shouldered plastic barrels when he throws them, but then as soon as they hit Fireball, they clang off his costume.
So
I don't want to fall back on the idea of it's like, oh, it was just it's an editing thing that's protecting the stalker because we've pretty much stomped that one into the ground. So I'm simply going to say that it's those barrels, much like the self-healing fabric. Everything in this thing is designed to put to tilt the odds in the favor of the stalkers. So it's like, oh, I'm a steel barrel that you're going to throw me. It's like, no, now I'm a Nerf bucket.
But it changes from plastic to steel
right,
before it hits him.
So it's like, oh, this won't hurt, and it's like it's meant to look like, oh, these guys are superhuman. He's shrugging off a steel barrel. My God.
Yeah, there you go. Okay.
Oh, okay.
That makes sense. It's meant to be like high visibility for a runner to be like, oh, I bet I could throw this at him and really do some damage, and then all of a sudden it's just like to the home audience, it's like he just shrugged off a steel barrel to the gut.
Well, and it takes them a second to get that fucking mask on, to get the Foley to work, right? So it's like shit. Type. Oh, he got hit by a steel barrel. Fireball, so tough. And I'm on board with that.
I mean, this is also like in the same area where clearly they have a lot of control because they left 3 moldering corpses of the previous season's winners out. Never bothered to clean it up. Left the tags on for identification, but just did not give a fuck.
Well,
and this was clearly wired for sound and video because they stumbled into it and Fireball went in there, and we have that footage to put on the screen.
This area is to Fireball what Kevin McAllister's house was in Home Alone. This is his hunting ground. He has every advantage here.
And those 3 winners were all not only in the same area, but they were all clearly had an unscheduled appointment with the business end of a flamethrower. They're all crispy as fuck. Kind of like Quinn from Blade.
I think they leave the corpses there and they have the feed there purely because of hubris. Because I think hubris is the answer for a different mistake where in the take, where in the beginning, with the whole fucking perimeter deactivated, Chico is the guards are typing this fucking code in on this massive screen that shows the code, and there's like two sides, and there's like one guy, like, why would you fucking do that? I think it's just hubris. It's like, yeah, here's the fucking code. Like, what are you gonna do with it, you dumb shit? So I think it's just, I think the authority level here has another fucking. Chaz just said it's hubris, another stalker. I would super fucking hubris. Oh, fuck yes,
so
I would cheer for.
So
hubris.
it's like the fucking mentality of the Third Reich, where it's like when they built their tanks, it's like, yeah, front and side armor, great. We're only moving forward.
Yep.
Wait, rear armor on the back? What do you need? We don't need that.
We don't need it. We're always winning.
Retreating anytime soon.
Yeah. So
All
it's
right.
like evidence. What? You mean that shit that other people worry about? Nah.
We're ICS. We create reality. Who gives
Exactly.
a shit? All right. I had a little bit. This is a tiny one that I picked up only because I'm like a giant fucking word nerd. But when before they pull Jesse Ventura out of retirement to go and be like the last stalker that. And I was really late when I was watching this. This is a totally different tangent, but do we even see what happens to Captain Freedom? Does he die? Because we see the deep fake stuff, but we don't see what happens.
I don't think we
all
see him
the
again
officers
after
get
that.
eviscerated.
He rides off into the sunset and becomes a governor.
Yeah.
No comeuppance, nothing.
Okay, well, that wasn't actually what I was getting at, because that's something I just thought of in the moment because I wondered about it. But when he's still doing his commentator thing in his blue blazer in the locker room, one of the first times we see him, he's walking toward the camera and he says, here in the locker room, there's a lot of excitement here.
Ha! So
and that's straight out of the Department of Redundancy Department.
So
I'm wondering if that's just because did Jesse Ventura ad-lib that line and they thought, he's a dumb shit, we'll keep it in. Was it written to make Captain Freedom sound like a dumb shit, or was it just something that was it a character choice? Help me out.
So funny you asked that, because I've seen this movie 1,000 times. I literally noticed it for the first time this time, rewound it and watched it again, and the lovely Melissa was like, well, how is that not a mistake? Because she got to fucking keep me on my toes. So what my answer was in that moment was that the word here is kind of like a keyed Pavlovian response, like a subconscious thing, like it's trained into the audience, where it's like that's their fucking keyword, that's their Winter Soldier word, where it's like whenever shit's going south, it's like they've been keyed into the word here is like
that's their would you kindly.
That's their would you kindly. That's their fucking get out stirred cup, right? That's like when you hear the word here, you are on board. Stalker's good, runner's bad. ICS great, Killian truth.
Which
and
would
it's
be back
like
up during the promo, because during the promo, when the dancing girls were dancing before the show even started, when they were promoting the Running Man, they pulled out the old NBC 80s slogan of "Be there." So it kind of ties into that. They're here now. You were there, now you're here. Be there, now you're here.
Right.
Here is your keyword.
So yeah, it's a full on fucking like just subconscious fucking trained word. So like. Yeah, at glance, it's like, oh, that's dumb. They should have reshot that line. But it's like, no, that's fucking on purpose.
No, it's doing exactly what it wants, because it's making it like we, you and we, us, we are here.
Yeah.
The outsiders, them, the runners.
It's an us versus
are,
them.
Right.
On the outside. So
right.
You're like, us good, them bad.
Yeah,
and as an old stalker, he's fucking deep into ICS. He's an announcer now. Like, he fucking knows what's up. So
he's a company man.
He's a company man. So he fucking knows what he's doing.
It's like when Taz used to do the commentary on SmackDown. It's like, dude who knows the ring, he knows the lingo, he knows the politics, and it's just like, yeah, he's there just to, it's like, just keep the momentum and keep everything where it's like, we're in this together. You don't go.
Like Killian said, we give the audience what they want.
You're good. So yeah, that's funny because this is probably the fucking 50th time I've seen this movie, but I noticed it for the first time this watch. I was like, that motherfucker's in here twice.
Little confession on my part. After watching Blade, I went through and I just started writing my notes. I didn't even bother rewatching Running Man, so everything I had was off the top of my head, because I haven't watched that movie in probably a couple months, but I watched it so much as when I was younger. I was like, oh, fuck it, I remember all of this. Screw it. It's like,
it's all right there.
I trust you.
I started. Yeah, go ahead.
I was just going to say that I really would like to see, as good as this movie is, I know I kind of gave it some shit on Facebook yesterday. I was being snarky. But as good as this movie is, I would kind of love to see a reboot that skewed a little closer to the original Richard Bachman, I got to keep kayfabe again, book. Because when I watched this movie, I think the reason why as a kid I didn't like it so much is because I got into Stephen King super early, and I read the book, and to me the book had a premise that would have been all but unfilmable at the time, but to me was a little more interesting. It wasn't like, it was still a game show, but it wasn't an arena that they released these guys into. It was more like they took this convicted criminal and said, now just go out and run through the world. The world is your playground. Our stalkers are like skip tracers and PIs, and these guys can track you down. The one requirement we have is that you send back a videotape or whatever it was. Maybe it was a disc in the book.
It's a video testimonial that's like, from what I remember, it's like if you had an iPhone that was kind of like a micro recorder.
And they could trace you with that. So they knew where you were the last place you postmarked when you sent back a video. And that was the only tangible thing they had to go on. The rest of it was just all their skills. So I would love to see a redo of this movie that was a little bit more faithful to the source material, because I think now, especially with how paranoid people are about, you know, privacy and how keyed in we are to really large-scale reality shows, I think a closer to the book reboot of Running Man now would be a really interesting social experiment, and I would love to see that movie.
Although the ending in the book would be a little...
Yeah, that's true.
A little sticky.
Hollywood loves a happy ending, and that book definitely did not have one.
Also, just the way it comes about, Ryan. Ryan, have you read the book?
I have not.
You know?
I've not.
So, minor spoiler alert. It basically ends with Ben Richards. I believe he has been shot. He is dying.
He's holding in his own intestines.
Yeah, he's holding in his own guts.
Like you do.
Yeah.
Like you do. But he gets his ultimate fucking... Well, it's a happy ending in the same way that it's like they live, because it's like it is the last laugh. It is the last great act of defiance.
Yeah.
But he commandeers and hijacks a fucking jet and flies it straight into the ICS broadcast tower.
That's like, rad. You'd never be able to get away with that today.
Yeah.
Planes flying into buildings is not really entertainment.
No. It's like, and even if it's like, if he's like, because it's written that it's like he aims it right for Killian's office. And so they basically die face to face through the cockpit window and the glass. It's like, even still, it's like...
little problematic now.
Hard sell. Yeah. All I'm going to say is hard sell.
You know, I remember the visceral image of him holding in his own guts, but I'd forgotten the jet part, so thanks for reminding me of that.
Yeah.
I rescind everything I said in the last 5 minutes.
No, I still watch the remake.
If they were going to redo that, I would honestly want to see something kind of in between. Where it's like, yeah, you can give like the Schwarzenegger, Saccharin, Happy, John Parr, you know, Hearts on Fire ending, which I would totally be on board for, but stretch it out where it's like, this isn't just like a one evening 3-hour television event. It's like, no, this is something where it's like, it takes place over like a week.
It's like The Amazing Race, but with more murder.
Right.
Yes,
and so it's
exactly
like, you just watch these guys like get released and evade these people, but you just watch them get the shit kicked out of them and
I would watch that.
Suffer for a week. But again, you still have the one-liners, the gore. Like if Roger Corman was basically your production designer, where it's like, okay, we need bigger blood bags and bigger tits on screen at all times.
One of the other things that
that's always my
reason I want to see this movie on screen the way it was written is one of the funniest things that I remember from the book was because these guys had to file these video messages from the road. They had to postmark them. It was tape. They had to mail it back. And the rules only said they had to mail back the video. The video could be of anything. The idea being, well, we'll trace the postmark. If you're outside, we can maybe see where you are from a building. GPS was not a thing in the book, whatever. But one of the funniest things I remember is at one point Ben is in a hotel room and he's got the little camera set up on like the nightstand, and the video he chose to send back that week was just like a 5-minute long shot of his naked ass while he's humming the Running Man theme song. Mm-hmm. And that just, as a kid, I was like, that's hilarious.
Like,
they're going to put that on the air.
He's just smart enough in the book to where it's like he's able to troll and outthink the network just a little bit. And also, when they show the video, he actually watches it like at a bar or like somewhere. It's like where it's like when they use the obligatory watching television and being able to hear it through a pane of glass at a electronics shop. And it's like they have pictures and video testimonial of his wife telling the audience to go fuck themselves. But it's like he's looking going like, that is kind of her, but like made to look like she just walked off like, you know, either out of a trailer park brothel or like a Def Leppard video.
And then she gets murdered by Jesse Ventura.
And yeah, and also like his like what he because he actually says like he actually has like testimonial on like one of the first tapes, and he realizes they just dub him.
Yeah,
like they just completely like say he's like, okay, yeah, I haven't been caught yet, blah blah blah, and they make it sound like he's spitting like mad revolutionary rhetoric at them, just trying to piss people off.
So both the movie and the book were sort of bang on in predicting that dystopian idea of someday you will be able to choose your own reality through the media you subscribe to. Yep.
Also, one last little point. I just actually thought of this in thinking back. How is it that Ben Richards is able to survive, adversaries with chainsaws, like electro throwers? I still want Professor Sub-Zero's fucking hockey stick. I want that for the apocalypse. But also, and flamethrowers and all this, and jetpacks and shit. And yet, a giraffe net on the airport just takes him down.
Actually, my favorite part about that is that's one of my favorite shots in the movie because it's such a beautiful shot.
Oh, yeah.
It is.
You know that they probably had to fucking net the cameraman to get it that good.
Yeah.
So, some cameraman just fucking net me.
It's
It's
like,
fine.
oh fuck, I'm not getting paid enough.
Yeah.
That was there were tiny little things that the movie did get wrong. As prophetic as it was, there were little things like that. Like you can just run from an airport check-in line straight out of the tarmac. In a post 9/11 world, that would never happen. So that kind of stuck out to me. And then one other tiny little thing.
You can also, if your wife can't find her fucking travel pass, but the line is set, they'll just let you through. It's fine.
And then they walk through. The metal detector goes off, and the security guard's like, "Whatever, just lets them go through." And then he can run directly onto the tarmac. But then the other little thing that kind of it's a throwback to what we were talking about earlier, when he's at Amber's apartment and he's rummaging through the box and I found some contraband, these are illegal clothes, and look, you've got banned music, and he pulls out a couple of cassette tapes. I thought that was kind of adorable.
Yeah.
But no matter how prophetic some futuristic sci-fi movie wants to be, it's going to get tiny details wrong. But
this one did even fashion-wise. This one did pretty fucking well.
Yeah, it held up.
Like, even one thing I noticed, like, going through, like, all the security checkpoints and everything else, and they trying to build it up where it's like, oh, we're in the future, we've got all this technology. All the stuff that we have today where it's like, and this was actually brought up, like in the mistakes and continuity, where it's like, okay, they have, like, satellite imagery, deep fake technology, but strangely enough, no facial recognition technology.
So, I'm going to say that's because that's a directive for kind of fucking RoboCop,
right?
Where it's like that's the one thing I guess is like we're gonna do some fucking shady shit and we're gonna fucking bang hookers in back alleys. So we are not on board with facial recognition because I don't want you to know where I am or what I'm doing. So that's fucking directive for.
We can control a lot, but we don't need to see what our employees are doing. As long as they're in line, go to a Fleabag hotel with an hourly rate and a hooker and a vial full of blow. Just be back at your console by 8 a.m.
Yeah. Last thing I'll mention is that some of the little background details that I thought were really fun. In a world where we can get away with trashy reality shows, like I don't know if you guys watched this. There's a show called Too Hot to Handle on Netflix. It was disgusting, and I loved it. They put a bunch of hot singles into some beachside resort and then tell them they can't fuck each other, and if they do, they lose money. It's great. It was awful, and it was exactly what I needed to get through the first part of this pandemic. But one of the things that I think, an idea that this time has come, in Killian's office, that we see him talking to his staff and getting his makeup touched up. The poster for The Hate Boat. I think somebody really needs to make that movie. I want to see that.
They have Hate Boat and they have Pain. They have Pain American Style as opposed to Love American Style. I was like, fuck yes.
I want to see a bunch of people that are told you're going to be on a reality show. We're going to film a luxury cruise, and it's going to be like a love thing. Maybe you'll hook up with somebody, and then it's like they do like social media research to find out who the fuck do you hate more than anybody in the world, and we're going to put you on a boat in the Caribbean with no escape for like 3 or 4 weeks, and you're either going to kill each other or you're going to work out your shit. And either way, it's going to be feel good or satifying.
Yeah, it's like here's your ex-girlfriend and here's your cousin that stole $1,000 from you, and you're all sharing an inside stateroom. Have fun. Like, fuck.
Don't do anything you wouldn't want the cameras to see. And if you kill each other, well, maybe we're in international waters and you can't be prosecuted. But we didn't tell you that.
Where all of a sudden it's like halfway through the voyage, it's like, okay, folks, we're going to change things up. We're going to put you into new cabins. And all of a sudden, people start finding like all the secret compartments in the cabins where it's like, oh, a gun with only 2 bullets and no serial number on it.
And the door is locked.
And the door is like,
boat promising murder for everyone.
Oh God! You know what? Tie that
so bad.
Oh yeah. You know what? Let's up that a little bit because let's send the Hate Boat out to like some little abandoned or like uncharted island, and just go right into Fantasy Island, but do it like the modern reboot where it's like, okay, you survived the Hate Boat. Now you're stuck in a fucking Twilight Zone with a midget screaming nonsense at you, giving you narcotics and weapons.
So Fantasy Island Hate Boat Battle Royale. I'm on board.
Yeah. Yeah.
Well, boys, I think we've managed to prove that The Running Man is a flawless film. So before we sign off and say our goodbyes, Jim, is there anything you want to plug?
In this weird timeline that we're in, this stupid pandemic, I, like most people, have been. I think I've bought Jeff Bezos a yacht with all the shit that I've ordered from Amazon. Even though he's a billionaire, and I rail against those guys all the time, I'm totally guilty of being completely two-faced about that. But I discovered these little things. Now, I don't know if you can see it behind me. I've got the arcade machine back there.
Yes.
Which I love. It's a wonderful thing. So I sort of I don't really have even the space to collect even those like arcade one-up ones that are like kind of half the size. So what I decided to do instead is collect these tiny little keychain video games that actually here's the Pac-Man.
Fucking A, that's nice.
It's only about as big as my hand. I don't know if you can if you can see it, but it actually works.
I'll be damned.
You can play it. And there is, not from the same company, but there's another company called My Arcade that actually makes slightly larger versions of those.
I've seen those, yeah.
So, yeah, on top of the arcade machine behind me, I have 11 each of these, and they come in Frogger, Tetris, Galaxian, all of the games that you could possibly want, and every one of them works perfectly with just a couple of batteries in it. And they're not expensive. I think these little guys are maybe $20 each, and these things are maybe $30 each, and they're just fun as hell to collect, and they actually work. So, ultimate desk toys as far as I'm concerned.
That's pretty nice.
These are called the My Arcade, and these are Tiny Arcade.
Very
if you're
nice.
looking for these on Amazon.
Solid plug.
Very cool.
Eric, how about you?
So I have been just digging through the depths of Amazon Prime and Netflix for either stuff that I've forgotten about or just things that just look intriguing. One thing I've been doing is I'll go to a recommended list, but instead of looking like sequentially like, oh, the first suggestion, I'll just skip to the bottom because I want to see what the furthest reach of that algorithm is.
Yeah.
And that led me to two movies. One I had seen way back in my childhood and one that had come recommended. So I'm going to recommend a double feature. I believe they're both on Prime. Again, Jeff Bezos is evil, but I can't beat the fucking convenience.
Whatever.
So the more modern movie, Velocipaster, if you haven't checked that out, oh dear God in heaven, it should not work on so many levels, and yet no one is half-assing a thing in that movie, and it is unironically just a crapter piece of glory. But if one movie is not enough to get through this pandemic, and everything is about like filling time, you're gonna have to dig for it. But Project Metal Beast. This is from like late 80s,
My
early
stage
90s. Name. It's a werewolf movie. Okay, so it starts in the 70s. They hunt down the U.S. military for reasons that mimic Aliens, where it's like, we want this as a bioweapon. Hunt down a werewolf, shoot it's like they kill it. One of the guys on the mission gets infected. They trank him and throw him in cryo and bring the corpse back. And then just, okay, you think, I think I know how this is going to go. Yeah, and you'd be wrong because they just go, oh, we're going to rip off Darkman and say we have this synthetic skin, but it kind of becomes this living metal if it isn't treated properly, and that's what they can't figure out. And they're like, oh, well, we've got a cadaver here in cryogenic stasis, so you can practice on him. And so they end up putting this living metal skin on the werewolf corpse out of the freezer, and it comes to
because why would you?
Bullets out.
I mean, if you have living metal skins and you have werewolf corpses, what the fuck else are you gonna do?
Yeah, so
it's not going to be a movie if they all just kind of sit there.
Yeah,
yeah. So it has no budget. It has no one I recognized. I looked it up on IMDb. I didn't recognize a single fucking name from the director, the writer, the producers, the cast, the crew. No one stood out, but I do remember the screen grab that they show of the final werewolf costume. When you just see it like with metal skin, it's like I'm not going to say that Killer Instinct ripped off their werewolf fighter character from this movie, but they totally fucking did, and they did a bad job at it. Because
you're not going to say it, but I'm literally going to say that right now.
But it is one of the most badass werewolf designs I have ever seen.
Nice.
And I want to see a mashup of those two movies.
I'm going to ask you to send me both of those titles in chat so that I can check them both out.
I will gladly do that.
Velocipaster I'll remember, but the other one, it kind of sounds like The one you were talking about before with the other dinosaur.
Death Machine. I will send you that one
Machine.
too.
All three. I want to watch all three of these. Anything you love is going to come highly recommended as far as I'm concerned.
Well, love is a strong word, but
Enjoy.
Please do.
So the only thing I'll plug is I plugged it on Facebook as well. But if you haven't watched the Grant documentary on History Channel, it's fucking amazing. It's only 3 episodes, but it is so good. And when I watched episode 1, it wasn't particularly contemporary and poignant, but it sure became poignant fast. So one of the best documentaries I've ever seen. 3 episodes, watch it. But otherwise, we'll do another Mistakes Live soon. I also, there's a couple episodes that I still am finishing editing because I'm a slacker and I'm the worst. Hackers is going to drop in a few days, so enjoy that.
So shout out to Eric Duquesne. Thank you for waiting.
Duquesne has been very patient, waiting for his episode to drop. So that'll be the next one I drop in a few days. I'm almost done editing it. Well, point is I'm almost done editing it. It'll drop in a few days. So thanks for joining me for Mistakes Live, Mistakes Live, boys. There we go. Cheers.
No editing that out. All right.
I can't. And in the meantime, everyone remember there are no mistakes, only missed takes. Pompeii.